sorry.
Opportunity. There's a copy of it. We don't have any choice.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I guess we're getting in there. Thank you for having me. I am Brendan Desetti. I'm the Director of Education Policy for the Software and Information Industry Association. We're based out of Washington, D.C. I'll also add a note that I am a partial product of the Texas public education system. My early childhood education was with Round Rock Public Schools and ISD. So if I do well, you can applaud yourselves for that. If I don't, you can blame it on the state of Kansas and their public education system. So I really do think this has been a really great conversation. That was a fantastic panel, and I was listening, and I have a lot of things that I want to talk about, and most things have been touched on already, so I hope I can just add some support for things that are here. As a background, SIIA is a high-tech industry trade association with over 700 members who are involved in software and content in many different sectors. But we have just over 200 companies who are involved in education technology specifically and acting as school service providers to many schools, if not every school here in the state of Texas and nationwide. So they're involved in developing, delivering software applications, digital instructional content, online learning services, and related technologies. And we're helping to support teachers in instruction, improve student learning, and carry out various administrative operations as well to improve school productivity and educational performance. The results, these newer technologies and data analytics can enhance data access, use, and security, and the result of all of this is we're better able to identify students who are at risk of failure today than we were previously. We're better able to identify the lessons that best match each student's unique learning needs, better able to identify instructional materials suited to a particular lesson or a particular school environment, and we're able to improve school operational productivity that we haven't been able to do in the past. And as such, technology and data systems are increasingly mission critical within schools to delivering a world-class education to every student in the state of Texas and around the country, and into ensuring our nation's competitiveness in an increasingly global economy. So as you are considering how the state board and legislature and the governor can improve the state's transition toward digital educational resources and implementation of additional technology in the classroom, I would offer 4 broad recommendations. One is to provide an easier method or a more effective method for the approval of digital and instructional materials at the state level, and a clear process, and we've heard this throughout the morning, a clear process for how digital materials can be updated on a regular basis and not just at the same, on the adoption cycle. So between adoption cycles, how can we ensure that our content is fresh and always current? 2 is to provide dedicated professional development dollars to ensure teachers are prepared to incorporate technology into instruction in a holistic manner. Technology cannot simply just be an add-on to your instruction, and just as curriculum cannot be tailored to one specific technology. We need to be thinking about this in a holistic approach. 3 would be to provide also dedicated, or to continue to provide dedicated support and funding for instructional materials, including digital instructional materials, and be wary of any promises that OER adoption or just going strictly to digital is going to reduce or eliminate some of these costs. It's always going to cost money to develop materials and to implement and to update. So we need to be sure that we're aware that we're still needing to make these types of investments, not just in the digital materials, but also in the necessary infrastructure to support them and the hardware to go along with that. And finally, we need to reduce barriers to access to technology. We can do that through supporting broadband infrastructure throughout the state, supporting hardware that's necessary to run such things, and to be careful when we are looking at policies on technology, whether it's adoption or privacy or other areas, that we're not limiting innovation in the classroom, but we're really helping students to succeed. So just going into a little bit more detail, the state process has typically been geared toward physical textbooks, and I think we heard that there's this need to expand what are the different models out there. So right now it's geared toward your instructional materials are for your full text or your full class. Being able to have more of an adaptive process for digital materials when we understanding that some schools, some teachers want more modular content. So how can we approve more modular things that schools can then adopt, pick and choose from, teachers can pick and choose from as well, that best meets the learning needs of the school or the infrastructure of the school and the students in particular. So learning how we can be a little bit more flexible on the state level, because a lot of these schools are still adopting from the state list, and I do applaud the transition in recent years to some more local flexibility and being able to adopt materials, but allowing schools to also see that there is some more modular content at the state level that's aligned to Texas state standards and research-based would be a smart move. And in lieu of sort of this rethinking of the instructional materials adoption process or creating some sort of separate digital instructional materials adoption, I would look at the proclamation system that we're putting forward today, and looking at how can we provide some additional guidance within those existing proclamations to guide publishers in their development, to help school districts understand what are the different types of materials that are out there. One example would be the state of Florida, who has developed two different definitions for instructional materials in digital format and electronic format. The digital format is the fully immersive and interactive sharing of, or not sharing, excuse me, interactive content that would have embedded links, embedded video, help students learn, and it's designed completely from inception as a digital material with learning standards and with assessments built in, versus an electronic material, which would be more of the PDF of a textbook that they put out there and you can get on your Kindle or something like that, but it's more of a flat, static material. So that would be one way to sort of guide and help publishers understand what you're looking for and and help schools to understand what they're purchasing. And then I would also add that one of the benefits of digital instructional materials is its flexibility, and the idea that we can update over the air, on demand, and on a regular basis this material to keep it fresh, so that we're not being stagnant and we're not waiting 6, 7, 8 years between adoption processes for schools to get new content. We've seen a lot of states who have thought about this and have studied the issue, but we don't really have any states who have made that next step, if they have a state adoption process, to how can we have a sort of a formal interim process for doing that. I think the state of Florida as well has studied this issue. They put out a report, but they haven't acted on it. So this is one area where the state of Texas can really be an industry leader in helping to help schools know and help publishers know how they can update their content and still allow it to maintain that state approval seal, so schools can feel safe downloading the updates and adopting a material outside of the adoption process. And then on professional development, it's really imperative that not only are we adopting materials that are digital and using technology, but our teachers know how to use it in the classroom and that they feel empowered to use data in an effective manner to target instruction to every student. So we have to begin to rethink how the professional development is done, and that we're investing in it. Data is a really powerful tool, but we need to know how to use it. And a good example of this holistic approach to implementing technology and preparing teachers is in the current proposal for reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. They have a new program, it's called iTech, that would provide dedicated dollars to professional development for teachers in technology. How do you use data? And it goes alongside specific dollars for technology and hardware. So as you're purchasing, you have to think there's two sides. There's not just the hardware, but there's professional development. Because if I put an iPad in the hands of a teacher who doesn't know how to use it, what are they going to use it for? Just to show, instead of putting a TV in front of the classroom, everyone has the video screen right in front of them. But we need to think about it a little bit more holistically. I'll also note the recent study from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, produced many headlines, this is on digital learning, produced many headlines around the country to the effect of education technology does not work, that it hasn't been effective and it hasn't moved the mark. But I think if you read the report, I think others would agree, you'll find that those titles were really misleading and missed several key points of the report. And those key points are: it's necessary to provide educators with the professional development and learning environments that support 21st century pedagogies and provide children with the 21st century skills they need to succeed in today and tomorrow's world. And technology is the only way to dramatically expand access to knowledge. Why should we be limiting students to textbooks that were printed 2 years ago and most likely designed 10 or more years ago when they could have access to the most recent resources today? Technology allows teachers and students to access specialized materials well beyond textbooks in multiple formats with little time and space constraints. And it provides greater platforms for collaboration and knowledge creation where teachers can share and enrich teaching materials. And technology can support new pedagogies as well that focus on learners as active participants with tools that can enhance the learning process. We heard some project-based learning, experiential learning, facilitating hands-on activities and cooperative learning. There's just so many different things that we can do today through technology that we haven't been able to do before, but we need to empower our teachers to understand how to do that, and that there are different pedagogies needed today than there were even 10 years ago. The data, I'll also note that the data from the report was gathered in the 2011-2012 school year, which is only 4 years ago, but it's a completely different world then than we're in today. It was a largely pre-mobile world. In 2007 was the launch of the iPhone, so that was the first start of smartphones that we actually have today. And then 2010 was when the iPad was announced. So there were no schools that were adopting iPads in the 2011-2012 school year because they hadn't come out yet, or they weren't at the stages where schools were able to do it. So we've completely shifted into this new world, and everything we're talking about today is so important because it's completely new. The idea of single sign-on 5 years ago wasn't on anybody's mind because we didn't have all these different materials out there, and it's a really great idea. And single sign-on is sort of the same fight of VHS versus Betamax. There's so many different platforms and standards out there, and we're just trying to find what's the right one that we're going to. And publishers are moving in that direction, and they're trying to meet these schools' needs. Could it be a more expedited process? Certainly, but we really want to make the right decision. So if the state wants to take a statement and look at what are some of these systems and standards that they want to rely on, publishers will meet you there. But it's important to make sure that we're adopting standards that aren't limiting to one period in time. Technology is such a rapidly changing environment. We want to make sure that any policies that we're adopting keeps up with that. And I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions. So I want to talk a little bit about instructional materials and OER. As we're shifting to digital, there's oftentimes the accompanying misconception that costs of materials will be significantly reduced, and therefore we can reduce our budgets for materials. And that's just a misconception. Every material, whether it's digital or whether it's print, has a price tag for development and for implementation. And digital materials have to account as well for regular updates and reviews and to maintain the accuracy of the content and the integrity of any software that's running it. Some costs that have not been associated with print materials before. Open educational resources, OER, also require an investment. The U.S. Department of Education recently announced a new initiative to encourage schools to replace one physical textbook with a digital open education resource. In this announcement, they stated that a full embrace of OER across the nation would free up $8 billion in instructional materials funding nationwide that could be used for other education uses. I would counter that's not an accurate statement. While an initial cost for OER can look very tempting to a school district, many times coming free of charge, there are other costs associated with these types of adoptions that need to be considered in order to ensure we're adopting the most high-quality materials necessary for use in schools. This includes ensuring that OER and any digital materials are research-based, that they're aligned with state learning standards, and that they're accessible to all students, both in terms of home and school use and for use by students with disabilities. Additionally, there are hardware, software, and professional development costs to consider in addition to the cost of updating materials on a regular basis. Simply moving to OER does not mean schools will no longer require funding for digital instruction or for instructional materials. Technology as a whole today is already mission critical, as I noted. Even in low-income schools, every student has access to some type of device at some point during the day, whether it's a personal cell phone, a tablet, or computer, or a school-issued device. And it's incumbent on us to ensure that those devices are used to benefit education, not to hinder it. Over the next 5 to 10 years, the intertwining of technology and learning will continue to grow, and it should be nurtured. And funding support is crucial to ensure that we don't step back. The recent switch in Texas from separate funding allotments for instructional materials and technology has been positive in terms of flexibility, but schools are still struggling to fill their needs. And the state should look at how this new funding allotment is actually working in schools and work to address the gaps that still exist, especially for supporting the hardware necessary to keep schools in the 21st century and capable of using today's tools. Funding for this hardware is just as vital as funding for the instructional materials. I was using a first-generation iPad up until a few months ago, and eventually it stopped being able to accept updates to different apps. It stopped being able to, it started crashing whenever I tried to run different programs. So technology gets outdated, and it gets outdated fairly quickly. So we need to look at this as a sustainable investment. The state of New York recently passed a $2 billion bond investment to invest in hardware, which is a great amount of money, but there are a lot of questions that are now remaining in the state as they go forward in purchasing their technology. How are they going to sustain this? What happens when things break? Who's going to pay for it? And what happens in the next few years when this technology needs to be replaced? Is the state going to have to take out another bond issue, and is the last bond going to be paid off at the same time? So these things need to be taken into consideration. And the last point I'll touch on is reducing barriers to access. We talked a lot about broadband here and the need to ensure infrastructure is sufficient to support Wi-Fi within the schools. It's incumbent on the state to encourage every school district to take advantage of their E-rate funds, especially as we've seen the significant increase in funding that's available. I would also say that the state cannot rely solely on the E-rate program. There needs to be a little bit more skin in the game from the state in supporting expanding broadband and infrastructure to every corner of the state, especially those rural communities that need it. We've seen in other states, such as New York, they just announced last year their new New York broadband program to invest $1 billion through a public-private partnership program to expand outreach, internet access, not just to schools, but to communities who have lacked access or have had access at such low speeds that they're not able to utilize technology today. So that's $1 billion. It's only $500 million from the state, and the other is matching funds from private companies such as internet service providers. So states are making this investment today. We see also in Florida, they just initiated a $40 million program, very small, but it's a start, and it's helping to expand access to underserved areas. So I'd encourage you to rethink that and to rethink the Texas Telecommunications Infrastructure Fund, TIF, which was discontinued in 2004, but serve that need to fund broadband infrastructure and to help schools get connected and communities. So look forward to doing that. And then I think privacy is such an important issue that we've touched on a little bit today, so I want to hit on that. With increased access and use of technology, there's been increase in attention paid to student data privacy and how schools and their service providers are accessing such data. SIIA and our member companies are strong believers in the protection of student information. This is a responsibility that every content provider keeps in the forefront of their minds. All service providers are bound by federal law under FERPA and COPPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, and COPPA, the Children Online Privacy Protection Act, or Personal Protection Act, to protect student information. Among many requirements and restrictions of these two laws, service providers are currently prohibited from selling personal information or from using information gathered from educational tools for targeted advertising. In an effort to be more transparent and to further demonstrate the commitment of the industry to protecting student information, SIIA partnered with the Future Privacy Forum, a nonpartisan think tank on privacy issues, to develop the Student Privacy Pledge. The 12 commitments of the pledge, which you can find at studentprivacypledge.org, demonstrate the core beliefs of the industry. A school service provider should not collect, maintain, use, or share student personal information beyond that needed for authorized educational or school purposes or as authorized by the parent or student. Not sell student personal information. Not use or disclose student information collected through an educational service for behavioral targeting of advertisements to students. Not build a personal profile of students other than for supporting an authorized educational school purpose as authorized by the parent or student. Not make, or as authorized by the parent or student. Not make material changes to privacy policies without first providing prominent notice to the account holders, i.e. the educational institution or agency or the parent or student when the information is collected directly from the student, and allowing them the choices before data is used in any manner inconsistent with the terms they initially provided, and not to make material changes to other policies or practices governing the use of student information that are inconsistent with contractual requirements. Additionally, not knowingly retaining student information, not knowingly retaining student information beyond the time period authorized to support the educational school purposes or as authorized by the parent or student. They also promise to collect and use, share, and retain student personal information only for purposes for which they're authorized by the educational institution, the teacher, or the student or parent, and to disclose clearly in contracts or privacy policies what types of student personal information is collected, if any, and for the purposes for which the information is maintained, is used, or shared with third parties. They promise to support access to and correction of student personally identifiable information by the student or their authorized parent. They promise to maintain a comprehensive security program that is reasonably designed to protect the security, privacy, confidentiality, and integrity of student personal information. And require that vendors with whom student personal information is shared in order to deliver the educational service are obligated to implement these same commitments and allow any successor entity to maintain the student personal information in the case of a merger or acquisition, but ensuring that they are held to the same standards. These are 12 commitments that are made voluntarily by over 200 educational technology companies right now, and it's putting their money where their mouth is. By taking this pledge and doing so in a public manner, they're under Section 5 of the FTC, which is an enforceable contract with their with schools and with parents. So if they violate any of these provisions, they can be held accountable by the Federal Trade Commission. Signed companies include Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, who's here today, as well as Google, Apple, Blackboard, many large companies that are content providers, all the way down to startup companies who are providing just individual apps, who are one or two people who are showing their commitment and participating in privacy. So I thought I could have a little bit more time, but if you have any other questions, I'd love to answer them today.
I want to make sure we're going to have access to what you
I have so much. Yeah, I was working on it.
That's a lot of information. It was very good, but it was a lot. So, Ms. Cargill, you...
Well, I didn't have my button on, but I'll...
Oh, sorry. I thought you said...
Well, no, I will ask about the privacy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, interestingly enough, and I was just looking at it again, let me see if I can find it. I received an email this week from two concerned parents. They don't know each other, but it was about the same thing. And it was about a, well, I won't say the name of the website, but it's a website that kids can use for science. I'll tell you that much. But their students, and one student was 12 and one was 13, and so, but they both had to enter everything from their name, address, birthday, phone number, email address, and the school district doesn't have an email address that it provides, so it had to be their email address or their parents' email address. And so this was very, very disturbing to these parents. And not only that, but I don't know what the law is, and I haven't looked it up, but I'm assuming they're both correct because I've already contacted the company and heard back from them, and they've already tried to make changes. So I think a lot of it's just ignorance on the part of some of the companies that they're asking for too much data. But at the age of 13, there can be ads in these computer programs. Did y'all know that? But under 13, there can't be. So when I got on the site and registered as a student, because they gave me a password and all, of course I'm over 13, and I put that in there. I think I was 15, and there were ads for Zulily clothing, which could distract any 14-year-old girl or boy, I guess. And then all this, anti-malware, spam, very, very distracting. So I wanted you to comment on that, the ads that run throughout some of these. Mm-hmm. And then also on that personal data issue, is it just a matter of some of the companies not knowing that they're asking too much? And they were saying that there are international rules for science fairs and science projects that needed all that data. That's what the company said. And that doesn't make sense to me, why it would be needed. I think just the name, age, and the school. The name of the student, the age, the teacher, done.
And is this, just a clarifying question, is it a software or website that was directed to be used by the school?
Yes.
Okay.
Every student has to use this particular website to do some of their science lessons. Yeah,
I think there's a need for some additional professional development on the vendor side on what their requirements are under FERPA, and the schools should help vendors understand that. It's incumbent on us to help our school district clients meet their requirements because FERPA is on the school, and then that's transferred to the vendors as well. So it's incumbent that they collect only what they need. Now, if the part of that service is to help students enter competitions, then there might be a need for some of that information. But it should be a greater conversation with that vendor on what is required and what is not when you're registering for the site. Now, also, the accounts that are developed under those sites are then controlled by the school and controlled by the student themselves, so they have the opportunity to delete that information, and it's not stuff that the company is able to retain beyond what the student or the parent or the school wants them
That
to.
will be my next question, is to see what the district knows about what was being collected about the kids,
Right.
about the students. And then could you comment on the ad?
Yeah.
Ad thing?
Yeah, so the ads typically, so that's a free site is my assumption. It's a free site. Companies rely on some sort of advertising revenue to create these products and deliver them at low or no cost to schools. Those types of advertisements are not based on what the student is doing on the site. They're not based on how the student's learning, and then they're targeting those types of advertisements. They're contextual type advertisements that you would find, like if a student went to Google and the google.com and entered Italy because they were researching Italy, and then some ads came up on Google for Italy vacations or how to learn Italian with Rosetta Stone. Those are advertisements that support that service, but they're not based on information being collected about the student or anything like that. Now, there's another conversation that we had about the appropriateness of advertisements, and COPPA has tried to address that as well. But it needs to be understood as well that advertisement, sometimes the way it's defined in different state laws, almost accidentally encompasses also recommendation engines that a lot of companies use to help students access other types of educational resources. So if a student is struggling with multiples of 2 or multiples of 12, a recommendation engine can recommend or advertise other educational resources to help a student master that content. And a lot of times those recommendations are free, that the school already owns, that might be in the library, but ensuring that we're not barring those types of services from helping students succeed is important.
I did want to ask about accessibility. How are other states kind of handling, we want to make sure that our content is being accessible to all students, no matter what the disability might be and that sort of thing. Are there ways that when they're calling for material, that they're making sure that those materials, is there a way that other states are doing things to make sure that those materials are what they're supposed to be, which is accessible?
Yeah, and I think Texas follows the same rules as supporting the NIM system of submitting all of your content to and I'm forgetting the full acronym, but submitting that content so that it can be made in an accessible format for students who have disabilities. And so continuing that is what we're looking for, and ensuring that content that's on a wholly digital device or a wholly digital system can also be submitted to those types of services so that they can be translated into accessible documents or accessible formats for other students, whether it's large print. And if it's a digital material, that can automatically be done is to resize font, things like that for students who might have visual impairments. So that's what we're looking for, and ensuring that if a school is adopting a certain type of innovative technology, that there's an appropriate equivalent for other students as well to have access to that same type of content, same type of learning objective.
One of the things that we're considering in our operating rules regarding this particular issue with proclamations is requiring that anyone submitting materials has to get a third-party independent verifier to actually verify that the materials are accessible. And is that a common practice? I mean, I don't know what's being done in that area. I'm just kind of wondering about that, because you don't want a school relied on accessibility and then it's not accessible.
I don't know of a third party who provides that type of certification that something would be accessible to other students with disabilities. But I do know that when we're considering what are these policies, and we're sort of looking at that right now on the federal level for the Higher Education Act and providing accessible materials to students, is that we want to make sure that we're not prohibiting schools from adopting really innovative technologies that have not had an equivalent technology provided for students with disabilities, but that schools are still able to provide them with equal content that might not be on the same device or something like that. So whatever rules that we're putting out there, whether it's for its improving, being approved by a third party or not, that we're not limiting what schools can be looking for in technologies.
Just real quick, and it's a kind of a teacher preparation question. And just in your experience, have the teacher prep institutions really kept up, and to what extent are the teachers really prepared to, number one, stay out of the weeds? Because, teachers in classrooms can really, there's great opportunities for good and big mistakes in technology. And then secondly, are the teachers really coming out of those institutions prepared to fully embrace and implement technology? What's been your observation on that?
So there are institutions who are looking at that, preparation programs who are looking at how can we create a track within our program to help teachers understand what is data and how to use data. I think part of the problem with shifting this mentality within programs is that data today has been seen more as a hammer to come down on schools when you don't meet your specifications. And as much as we can with state policies to shift from data as a hammer to data as a flashlight to shine on areas of weaknesses to help so teachers can identify where they need to help other students succeed and how they can use data to improve or target instructional strategies. I think that's going to help shift the mentality within teacher preparation programs to how in every aspect of their teaching does data impact their pedagogy. So programs are making some progress, but there needs to be some outside influence on them to help them speed that forward.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. And we are going to take a break, and we're going to reconvene at 11 or 12:45 for the next panel. And the food is down the hall, so if anyone needs lunch. Thank you.